With so much drama in the LBC, it's kind of hard being Snoop D-O-double-G. But I, somehow, some way, keep coming up with funky ass shit, like every single day. May I kick a little something for the G's and make a few ends as I breeze through 2 in the morning and the party's still jumping because my mama ain't home. I got bitches in the living room getting it on, and they ain't leaving till 6 in the morning. So what you want to do? Shit. I got a pocket full of rubbers and my homeboys do too. So turn off the lights and close the doors. But for what? We don't love them hoes, yeah. So we gonna smoke an ounce to this. G's up, hose down, while you motherfuckers bounce to this. Snoop Dogg, Gin and Juice, classic. Good morning, Bitcoin. Welcome to Bitcoin Talk Show. Today is July 17th, July 16th. I'm early, 2018. Amazon Prime Day. How excited? Are you excited? I'm excited. The price of Bitcoin is mysterious, as Bitcoin average sometimes takes a long time to load. The price of Bitcoin is up 4.35% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 6,625, a low of 6,335, and a high of 6,651. It just seems like it goes up while you're sleeping, right? That whole thing I said about how if you're not in the market, you're going to miss the days when it goes up, but you'll also miss the days when it goes down. Last night was one of those days. Bitcoin appears to be up. It might have stopped raining. I don't know. That's $1 for 15,099 Satoshis as we approach the 15,000 Satoshi barrier going the other way this time. We're checking out Twitter on Mad Bitcoins. I'm starting to lose it with Firefox. One day it doesn't load pages. I switch to the other browser, Chrome. It loads pages fine. Then Firefox doesn't restore my open tabs. Only takes a couple of failures like this before I switch back. We saw an interesting report that cryptocurrency should not be regulated, according to a French report. Vive la France. That sounds great. And again, cryptocurrency can't be regulated, especially good ones like Bitcoin with no founder, no foundation, don't own a bank, all those things. It just can't be regulated. I watched a great documentary yesterday on Netflix called Icarus. It won the Academy Award for Best Documentary this year. And it's about this guy who is the head of the Russian Anti-Doping Federation. And he actually should have been the head of the Russian Doping Federation. An incredible story about how they beat doping controls for over 50 years. 50 years of corrupt cheating and crooked athletes, all state-sponsored, all from the top, and all for the glory of Russia. Of course, now we can only say that they're glorious in the way they were able to cheat, the way that the KGB was able to remove the non-sealable, non-removable bottles. They were able to open them, but later we found that they did leave marks. They didn't leave enough marks to be noticed at the time. Very interesting documentary, Icarus. And as I mentioned here, the Russians also doped at the Paralympics. When they told the people in charge of anti-doping that they had been beaten for 50 years by these tests, they cried. They cried. They believed that they had been protecting sport and that they had done a good job. And it turned out that this guy had made a fool of them all over the place. Very interesting movie if you want to check that out. We had a nice morning. I said, "Good morning, Bitcoin." That's pretty good, huh? Can't beat that. I love this by Ken Jennings, the Jeopardy champion. I guess it's a little old, 2012. But Ken says, "Twitter is the best way ever invented to tell jokes to thousands of people who don't like or understand jokes." I thought that was pretty darn accurate. Check out Max Hillebrand. He's been doing some great live shows for us from Mises University. He's learning about Austrian economics this week, and you can learn about it too right here on the World Crypto Network. Be sure to subscribe down below and give us a thumbs up. We even had a positive market update from CoinDesk Markets. You don't see that very often. It's a BTC USD update. Outlook bullish. 78.6 Fibonacci retracement line is acting as resistance with support along the 21 EMA white line, creating a tightening channel. Technicals hint towards further growth with the bearish MACD history ticking down. Watch for a break above 6,360 to confirm the bull bias. And as we said this morning already, we're at $6,625. We've savagely broken above 63.50. So 63.60. So the bull bias is confirmed, at least for the short term. Just a reminder of Icarus. There's the poster all about cycling. I thought this was a super interesting story we might want to talk about some more. The horrible artificial intelligence in Aliens Colonial Marines got fixed with a single letter. Sorry. It turns out that a programmer had misspelled the word tether, spelling tether again, tether, with an extra A in there. This supposed to be tether system ended up being as tether. A fan-made patch went ahead and fixed this after years of the game failing. What they learned is because of this single one typo that probably happened many times as he misspelled it throughout his code, no doubt. This single typo cost them the AI of their system. The xenomorphs, they didn't know where they were spawning. They didn't know what its fighting space was. It didn't know where it was, so it was bad AI. And this all came from a single letter. So this shows you how precise programming is and what an interesting art that it is. How a game like that, with so many people working on it, so much riding on it, could be wrecked by a single typo. Very interesting stuff. I saw a great chart of Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin GitHub activity. As you can see, the Bitcoin GitHub activity, not only is it on a different scale, it goes from 0 to 100 instead of 0 to 50. So it's actually twice as large as this second one, if you like to confuse people with scientific graphs. But also, there's just hardly any activity here on the Bcash GitHub. It's not really an open source project. It's not really being worked on by thousands of programmers. And it's really embarrassing for anyone still sticking with it. It's just not the same. I also had this great tweet, Dogecoin versus Bcash. Doge has more transactions in the last 24 hours. Doge has a faster block time, almost 10 times faster. Doge has cheaper transaction fees, and Doge has twice the number of active addresses. So I don't know what to tell you guys, but Dogecoin is beating Bcash in every metric that we have. And it's based on a joke. So, oh well. Um, Let's see. As they say here, the Bitcoin Cash network is highly centralized with 49% of all nodes running on the Alibaba facilities, which is like an Amazon cloud, but in China. A hacker group shows that 98% of the IP addresses were located physically close to each other. So this is the failure of Bitcoin Cash. This is why it failed, because it's centralized. Centralization removes censorship resistance. If I want to censor your transaction on Bitcoin Cash, all I have to do is take over Alibaba's facilities as a government or a large corporation. That would be easy to do. Then I could control the Bitcoin Cash network, or I could simply turn it off. You'll never be able to send donations to WikiLeaks using a network that has been turned off. This is the argument that we were having. We said that data centers would be centralized, likely by the larger blocks, causing smaller nodes to no longer be able to run, forcing people to run larger nodes. But this probably just turned off and failed because no one's interested. The only people that are interested are the Bcashers and those who have a large amount of skin in the game. They can't walk away. Great quote by Crypto Cobain, who I guess has retired. Good stuff. He says, one day you're going to look at your phone and realize that you actually made no money. Bitcoin doesn't exist. Your Twitter feed is simply loads of furries, fake celebrities, and Barney the fucking dinosaur drawings. You're in an asylum waiting to die. And there's lots of different ways to take this. Part of it's certainly funny. Part of it's not funny. Part of it's critical, and part of it's thoughtful. So I think that was a super interesting tweet by Crypto Cobain. Good stuff. Keep it up. As the announcer said during the World Cup, France didn't perform well, but they are the champions. I agree with that. Those 2 penalty kicks really did set the game up for them, but they scored 2 goals in the second half, and that made them champions for sure. Francis Pouillard showed us what it's like to be in a French bar right now. He might be in Canada, though. And we are joined by Ricardo from Rico Coin Report. Are you with us, Ricardo?
I am. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's been quite an experience in Paris. I wouldn't have wished this upon anybody who likes their space. I mean, it was pretty much the bull run once France won, and there's a lot of people who are actually pretty upset that France won the way they won. If you touch a point on that, because the 2 points that were scored from the penalty kicks were, I haven't even, to be honest, people are going to kill me over this, but I kind of watched the highlights and got the back take of it. I was spending time with my family. I had a family dinner, so we heard it because we had a huge picnic in the park, but we didn't have to. We weren't watching it, but it was mental just to hear it. So I don't live in Paris. Go ahead.
A lot of people do that around here. They go skiing on Super Bowl Sunday, or they go out to a nice restaurant. They know it's going to be empty. I'll bet the park was really great that day. Everybody was watching the game.
No, it was great. We had a great time. It was quite nice. But my wife has to go into Central all the time to work because she works right next to the Champs-Elysees, and every single street, side streets, main streets, were trashed. I mean, it was you were pushing your feet through trash because it was just atrocious. And they're having this huge parade tonight, and so they've had the custodial working like since 12 o'clock, just nonstop, trying to get the destruction of Paris. Windows, cars, you name it. So luckily, I don't live right in Central. That was a good thing.
Nice. Sounds like a good time. Surprising to see the comparison of the trash versus, say, the Hong Kong protests. It's been a few years, but I was able to cover the Hong Kong democracy protests live right here on the World Crypto Network. You can check it out. James Bang at PR Hacks was there on the ground covering it with his phone for us.
Whoa.
And what was so interesting about that is it was a protest and they wanted their rights and they were serious. It's a very serious cause. But at the same time, if a glass broke on the street, a Hong Kong man with a dustbin and a broom would show up and he would broom it up and he would put it in the trash himself. And these people had so much respect for their streets and their environments that they would pick up their own trash. And people around it were describing it as just the cleanest protest they'd ever seen, just the most polite and the most clean. And it says so much. It's hard to generalize or stereotype, but from what I gather from that, it says so much about the Hong Kong people. Just what incredible high quality, and also though kind of controlled because they're afraid to litter. Where I'd say the Americans are less controlled and we love to litter, but that kind of makes us low quality. Or it creates jobs for the person who picks up the litter. I don't know. What do you think, Ricardo?
Well, I can tell you one thing. The bell's going to ring in 2 seconds, but until then, hold on.
All right, the bells are ringing in Paris, and let's go back and cover a little bit more Bitcoin news, and we'll talk more about protesters. So the big story today that I haven't even read yet is that the reason Bitcoin's going up, according to the mainstream media, which I don't necessarily believe, is that Bitcoin jumps after report that BlackRock is getting serious about the cryptocurrency market. And for those of you who don't know, let's see if I can find an actual definition. BlackRock is a huge investment group. I kind of need more information on that myself. But they're saying because BlackRock has formed a team to investigate different parts of the business, to investigate Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchain, the technology that underpins them. The asset management giant will also study whether or not it should invest in Bitcoin futures, which kind of has to be a no-brainer, right? If we're looking at this chart, and let's put it in log. People love that. Log, log, log. Everyone loves a log. And as you can see here, if we zoom out to all, Bitcoin's gone nothing but up. So if you do a diagonal line through the middle of this, it's a diagonal line up and to the right. So I don't know what rock you've been sleeping under, black rock or whatever, black rock, blue rock, green block, whatever kind of rock it is. Maybe you need these guys' advice. But yeah, this thing goes up. This is the most important monetary event in our history. And again, you're late to the party, but I welcome you. BlackRock, you're welcome. Look at your chart. Let's see if I can get a long. Okay, so here's year to date. It won't even give me longer. 1 day. Can I zoom out more? I'd love to see a comparison of this chart and the Bitcoin chart. I don't know that I can get it right now. It says comparison here, but yeah, no, I want the real chart. I want to compare it with Bitcoin. Anyway, I don't think that BlackRock's done as well as Bitcoin. That's my point. So they'd be better off with Bitcoin futures, and I welcome them investing. I don't know necessarily that this is the reason that the price went up. People like to say this is the reason, and that's it. But it looked like we'd already hit the bottom, and we were already recovering, and it was already going back up. But what do you think, Ricardo? Back with us after the bells?
Yeah, actually, this is a great point. My wife has used to work for S&P 500 here in Paris, and any investment firms that are publicly stating that they're going to be getting into Bitcoin just goes to show that we are moving, you know, and there's things that are happening in Europe that no one's aware of that is being exchanged on a very small exchange. And I think this is what Max is going to be talking a little bit about, or getting a little bit of input on. And I see we're coming in live with Max in Alabama. Can you hear us, Max?
Yes, Rico, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Absolutely.
Right.
Tell us what's going on in your day.
Well, we are here live at the Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama, at the Mises University, the best week of the year by far. I'm Max Hillebrand, and joining me today for a brief period is Julius from Finland. Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Julian.
Hello, Julius.
Welcome
to the show.
Julius. Yeah.
What is it?
It's
Julius. Julius. Yeah.
Julius, pardon.
All right, go ahead. What are you guys learning this week at the Mises University?
All about Austrian economics, basically. There's a bunch of topics, so we go through starting from the basics and build up and as the week goes. And there's also tests on the end, so yeah, still on the way.
And how does Austrian economics tie into Bitcoin? Are you guys fans of Bitcoin or not so much?
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about the hard money, and like I think the core of Austrian economics is in the hard money, and basically Bitcoin is a substitute for gold, and that's it.
Yes, I agree. I think that Bitcoin is fundamentally built with the studies of Austrian economics. Yeah. I would even go so far, and I said that in the earlier show today, that I think that Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he, she, or them was, actually either attended Mises University, where we're standing right now, or at least listened to a bunch of lectures and read a bunch of books provided by the Mises Institute regarding Austrian economics. Because the Austrian economic aspect is so damn strong in Bitcoin. It's not a coincidence.
Yeah, and it's basically how I get to understand what Bitcoin is by reading Austrian economic books, and through that I just became to understand the fundamental value of Bitcoin. And before I had read Austrian economics, I was like a bit confused on the topic. And now I understand, like, through hard money and what kind of things it causes, and what kind of actually fiat money, what's the bad sides of it.
And I talked about this a little bit yesterday when I talked about Bitcoin maximalism. But would you guys agree that we're solving a larger problem here, the problem of sound money? People come along with their altcoins and they say they have a faster payment system, or they're working on smart contracts or gambling or one of these other problems. And I say, that's great. I want to solve the problem of sound money. I think when we solve that, everything else will change, and that Bitcoin actually does that. So I get really excited about that. And I think it's just way more important. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, money is a really, really, really important tool in the economy. It's basically half of every transaction, because either you are buying something with money or you're selling something for money. So there's one good and one money in every transaction. And this means if you have a bad money, you're going to have a bad economy. And the economy is the fundamental part of human society. And if you have a bad money, you have a bad economy, you're going to have a bad society. But on the other hand, if you have a good money, a sound money, you're going to have a good economy, which is going to lead to a good society. So money is at the cornerstone of a prosperous society.
Yeah, and to the altcoin points, like, yeah, I can see people going the altcoins, and the thing is like Bitcoin, and the fundamental good part of Bitcoin is like it cannot be changed. It's politically like, so same attributes doesn't apply most of the altcoins, and like even if it does, like the network effect already gone through so far, and so on. And that's basically why I'm for Bitcoin. And it's the political side of it that's the most important for me. Like, you cannot change the money supply in the case of need, because in the case of need, if you change it, you increase the quantity of money in the circulation. It will only cause and like aggravate the problem.
And I think that need is something that we'd like to talk about here. I always say that it's a good thing if we switch to Bitcoin, because you can't print money to buy weapons or to start wars. But on the other side, you also can't print money for disaster relief or for road maintenance or whatever else you want to print money for. How do you guys see the world working when we can't print money anymore?
I would say, like, how I see it. Fundamentally, like, welfare state and all the social programs are run through and because of fiat money. Because how money is produced is through buying government bonds, which is basically government debt. So what this actually does, it creates demand for the government debt, and that's how governments get the chance to like float bonds on the market and people buy them, because they always know there's a central bank behind it that will always buy them from the market. There's always an implicit demand for them, and that's how I think, like, when we get to the point of hard money, when we get to the point of Bitcoin, it will get really hard to fund government spending, basically. And taxes, of course, about tax evasion. Oh, it's also a thing, but I think the core part is the hard money makes the government interest rate so high that it's not feasible to take it.
Exactly, absolutely. The thing with fiat money is that you can print it. You can print as much as you want of it. And the question is, who is going to print the money? Well, in the current system, it is the central bank. And the central bank will give this newly printed money to, first and foremost, the government. And what is the government going to use it for? Well, number one, it's going to use it to prop up the welfare state. The welfare state is a huge Ponzi scheme that only works if you steal people from money, if you steal money from people. And the other thing that is going to fund is war. Pretty much every war since the First World War has been funded by fiat money, by newly printed money. And this means you no longer have to save up enough money to destroy the stuff of other people. No, you can steal money and destroy the stuff from other people. So you no longer have to finance the war yourself. And this means that the war is going to be much longer, much harder, and much more dead people. And we are anarchists. We do not want dead people. We do not want people to be killed. And I think Bitcoin and sound money in general will take away the power to print money from the central banks and the governments. And this will lead to a decrease in the welfare state, which Austrian economics teaches you is mostly bad. And it will take away the power to print money to fight wars, which I think we all agree, wars are bad.
And what I think too is that it's just inevitable with the way Bitcoin's built, with the way the money's built, like you said, sticking to those rules, the 21 million units, and that we've essentially removed human action from the printing of money. Previously, there was always a human that you could go to and say, things are really bad. We've got to print money now. I know you didn't print it before, or maybe you had signed a pledge or something, but things are bad. It's time to print money. And Bitcoin, without having a leader, without having a creator, us not knowing who that is, with the way that the computer geeks are currently protecting and defending the rules, and hopefully will never change them, it's more inevitable that this sound money will be here, and that we'll have to deal with these strange new problems. Like I said, not being able to print money for disaster relief, but not being able to print it for war as well. Just like to ask you guys, Julius, are you presenting at the conference, or are you working on a paper or anything like that? What are you working on?
I'm just like starting a master's in economics and just fondly interested in the topic, and that's why I'm here. And yeah, also a Bitcoin guy, so I don't have like another background for it. I'm just interested in the topic.
That's great. I hope you'll be able to mention Bitcoin in your master's paper or something.
Oh yeah, it's I've already planned about it. there might be some involvement with Bitcoin when I do my thesis.
That's great. Ricardo, do you have a question for the guys?
Yeah, I've got more of a I've got kind of a question. More so, a lot of people don't know what Austrian economics is, and I was just kind of watching up on it, and I've been studying a lot about the introduction and adoption of currencies, and a lot about wars. I've just been cramming a bunch of research this weekend about this, and the ideal of fiat money. I think everybody should start kind of using the hashtag sound money, because that is what we're looking for. That's what Bitcoin kind of stands for. And it's the people's chance to use the money to actually evaluate what things should be worth. And I believe, if that's what I know, maybe they could explain us what, in a dumbed down version of what Austrian economics is, like 101 for people who don't know anything about it.
Well, in Austrian economics, there is basically one fundamental axiom. An axiom is an undisputable truth, a truth that we know for 100% is true. Well, that's what a truth is, right? And if we have one fundamental axiom, we can build upon that and further, with logical deduction, figure out how stuff works, you know? So for example, it is a fundamental axiom that 2 + 2 = 4. And this is true. We know this to be true. And therefore, we can also deduct that 3 + 3 = 6. We do not have to put any new conclusions, any new axioms into the system. Once we have built one of those axioms, we can start building upon that. And so the fundamental axiom in Austrian economics is the following: humans act. That's it. Human action. All we humans do is strive to remove uneasiness. We are always in a perpetual state of uneasiness. We would like to have more stuff. We would like to be at a different place. We're hungry and we would like to eat something. And all we do is remove uneasiness through our actions. So when I am hungry, I have the uneasiness of being hungry. And my action will be to go to the fridge, get a bread, put some ham on it, and eat the sandwich, you know? And through my action, the making of the bread and the eating it, I have removed my uneasiness, which is hunger.
Yeah, that's basically it. That's the core of the principle right there. Yeah. And maybe if we could want to expand like the general topics that people mostly are concerned about in Austrian economics, and what's, for me, what is the core in it is the sound money principle. Yeah, that's the core of it. Yeah.
I also think that a lot of people that are entering the space of owning cryptocurrency or just owning your own fiat currency need to realize that what you're using it for, you're being priced for something, you're paying for something, you're paying for services. And when you exchange that currency, you are supporting that currency. You're supporting what it stands for. And if it stands for nothing and it's just being created, inflated, and made up for whatever, then you are supporting a system, whether it's good or bad. So in a sense, I think everybody listening should understand that what he's talking about is being able to take control of your currency and use it legitimately for what you think the value is worth. And if you don't value fiat currency, like I don't value it, I store the value in an alternative cryptocurrency. I think that people just need to realize that with Austrian economics, it's something that is not practiced. We are living in a world where everything is just charged to whatever they want, inflated, deflated, and it's really not worth anything because everybody's just paying each other's debt. And so when you're in a debt society, it's just a matter of time before that collapses. And I like the Austrian economics because it's very clean, it's very structurally building, and everybody agrees on it, agreed how much it takes to make it, and agreed how much it takes for how much we need it. Like, do we need it? That's like the number one thing. How much do we need it? What's the demand? You know, and then after 5 steps, yeah, there's the price that they price it for. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Absolutely. And, you know, I can tell for myself that I prefer, let's say, a banana to a peach. But I can only say this for myself. I cannot say, hey, Matt Bitcoins, I know that you prefer a car over a motorcycle. I don't know that because I cannot see into your mind. And therefore, there is only individual valuation. We cannot make a value judgment for others. That is impossible. But how we can prove that the value judgment is after the action. So for example, I can prove that Matt Bitcoins prefers a car to a motorcycle if he goes out and buys a car. Because with the same money, he could have bought a motorcycle, but he did not. He bought a car. So his personal value judgment in the specific moment of the purchase was first the car, then the motorcycle. And the beautiful thing about Austrian economics is that it says every time where you have a voluntary and 100% peaceful interaction, both parties are better off. So in this example, it would be Matt Bitcoins has, let's say, 50,000 bucks, hopefully in Bitcoin. Let's say he has 10 Bitcoins, that's a better example. And he goes out and buys a car with that. He goes out and buys his Lamborghini. Well, for him, he valued the Lamborghini higher than the 10 Bitcoins. But, or let's say 100 Bitcoins, I guess a Lamborghini is a bit more expensive. But for the car dealer, he already has the Lamborghini, right? And he values this because he has it, you know. But in the action of the car seller to sell the car for 100 Bitcoins, he proves that he values 100 Bitcoins more than the car. And therefore, the car dealer has to think that he values more, the 100 Bitcoins. And Matt Bitcoins has to think that he values more, which is the Lambo. So both are better off. And we can prove that logically.
Yeah, and about the choices on if you want to use fiat currency or you use Bitcoin, the good thing right now is that you can choose. There's like, it's the first time I think since 2000, like 1800s. Yeah.
I mean, we had fiat money pretty much since the 1930s, yeah, and especially since the 1970s.
Yeah, but basically it was illegal then. It was gold like in the 1800s also. Yeah. So basically, anyways, what has come with the cryptocurrencies is that we finally have the choice. Like, if you don't like Bitcoin, you don't like the monetary policy it provides you, you can always choose another one. You can use fiat money if you want. You can use like highly inflated cryptocurrency if you like the thesis behind it. But for us, it's Bitcoin, and that's a choice you make, and that's the great thing about it. Nobody's forcing you. You have the choice.
Exactly. We have anarchy in money now. We have competition in money now. And I heard that one guy is writing a really smart paper on that. I wonder who that is.
That's interesting. Go ahead, Thomas.
It sounds very good. And it reminds me a lot. It's kind of like put your money where your mouth is. And it wasn't too long ago that the Mad Bitcoins traded a bunch of Bcash for a laptop. And it worked out really good because I get utility out of this laptop. I took it with me to Europe and I broadcast all my shows on it until I got this cool computer that I'm using now. And I valued the laptop more than I valued the Bcash. And the Bcash did go up in value. I could have gotten 3 or 4 laptops, but there's also time. I needed a laptop to go to Europe. I wanted a nice new one. I wanted to have faster computer, all these things. I valued this thing more than the potential monetary gain from Bcash or the potential monetary loss. And I want to ask you guys the question that we're getting a lot of in the chat. Certainly, I'm behind Bitcoin because I think it's going to solve the sound money problem. And I think that's the biggest problem in the world. So I'm excited. There's upsides and downsides, but I'm excited to see it solved and to see what happens. What about the altcoins? There are some altcoins that want to be like Bitcoin. Maybe they want to be a better version of sound money. There are some altcoins, like you said, that are inflationary, that are totally different, that are more like utility tokens, less like currency. They print a lot of them. There's new ones every day. What would the Mises University say about the altcoins?
Really good question. And as we said earlier, we now have anarchy and competition in money. So there will be, and there already are, thousands upon thousands of different cryptocurrencies. And you, as the user, can choose which one you are going to use, which is a great place to be in. And we will have all different kinds of monetary policy. Now, the question is, which monetary policy is the best? Is inflation better? Maybe it is. I mean, we had inflation for the last 100 years, probably even longer. But most recently, like in the last 10 years, it's been crazy with quantitative easing. Well, it happened. So there has to be some value in inflated money. Well, but maybe a other form of money is superior. And that's where economics comes in. Because now we have to decide what monetary policy is logically built on logic, fundamental axioms, which currency or which monetary policy will be better. And that's where Austrian economics comes in and tells you that money is a measurement stick. And if you have a sound money, the measurement stick does not change. The supply of Bitcoin will never exceed 21 million. Right now it's 17.5 million Bitcoin, roughly. And it will never exceed that. And we know that. So we have a sound and a hard measurement stick. With fiat money, the measurement stick always changes. We do not know the monetary policy of the Fed and the ECB on Friday. We have no idea. They might do whatever the fuck they want. And therefore, we have a shifting measurement stick. And now think of that. Try building a house first with a sound measurement stick that is always 1 meter, or let's say a foot long. You're going to build a pretty good house because you have a solid measurement stick. But if you have a measurement stick that is always changing, let's say you lay down 1 brick and the measurement stick shows 1 yard, and then you lay the second brick, but the measurement stick shows 1.5 yards. Well, the house is not going to stand for long. So the economy is much more robust with a sound money. And Austrian economics teaches you that a sound money will always be chosen on the free market.
Yeah, and about the alternatives, there's many, and trying to beat Bitcoin and stuff like that. But it's like you got it first. That's my opinion. Bitcoin is the most rigid of them all because. And the best part of it is that nobody knows who is Satoshi Nakamoto. I think that's the greatest part. There is no political pressure, and even if it was, there's nothing they can do about it. And in that way, I see any rigid money, any hard money is good, and it's good to have competition. And in the end, we will see which one will win. And yeah, that's our hard money perspective for this case. And then the most important part for the guys who want hard money is that can it be politically manipulated? And if it cannot, it's a hard money. If it can, it's not. And most of the alt currencies are not hard monies, not in any sense.
Well said.
I think we're in an incredibly strong position here, not having Satoshi Nakamoto around. I really like him or the team or her or whoever. I think they're great guys, but not having them around puts us in such a strong position. None of the other alts can match that. Even in Ethereum's case, let's say Vitalik resigns or gives up, they'd bring in a new Vitalik, right? They would have a new leader that's just part of their structure. I want to ask you guys what I think might be a difficult question, and it's okay if you don't have the answer, but how do we get more people to care about economics? Most people in the US don't even know that we went off the gold standard in the 1970s. They don't know the difference between Keynesianism and Austrian economics. They don't know anything. They're not interested. The jargon keeps them away. How can we spread more awareness about this? Because it obviously matters. So what do you guys think?
Absolutely. It matters very, very, very much. But the thing is, Keynesian economics and the court economics that we have today, they all pander to the state. And they intentionally make the economics as confusing as possible. Try to read General Theory by John Maynard Keynes. It is horrible. The book is a chore to read. It's not a good read. It's really complicated. And you need to look up a bunch of stupid words that don't even make sense. And you have a bunch of graphs and numbers and calculations that the model kind of makes sense, but it's only a model. It's not the real truth. And it's not intuitive. On the other hand, Austrian economics, as I said, has this fundamental axioms of human action and that we are all free people, and everything else is derived upon that with simple logics. And if you read an Austrian economics book, you will find that it's really easy. I mean, try read For a New Liberty by Murray Rothbard, or What Has Government Done to Our Money from Murray Rothbard, or Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. They're really, really, really simple books. I gave one to my little sister. She's 13 years old now. She understood it perfectly fine. So it's really not that difficult, at least Austrian economics. So I think getting people onto Austrian economics is much, much easier than getting them onto Keynesian economics. And then the good thing is, with Austrian economics, we have amazing institutes like the Mises Institute that have thousands upon tens of thousands of gratis, completely 100% free audiobooks, PDF books, lectures, video series, seminars, articles, everything you could wish for about Austrian economics is available for free at Mises.org.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, and yeah, not too much to add to that. Yeah.
That's well said. I think that it's great. Austrian economics goes hand in hand with Bitcoin because it's a sound economics practice, and Bitcoin is a sound money. And what Thomas said is kind of the heart and backbone when it's even not there. Satoshi Nakamoto's absence is the proof that no one's behind this that's trying to, shift the paradigm in a sense for their control. They're not trying to get everybody onto their cryptocurrency. It's just kind of sticking. And I like that. I think that there's so much miscommunication and excuse me, I'm trying to think of the word. You can't think straight because there's just so much sound in the room where you just need one thing that sticks. Alternative currency, I think that one day people are gonna just realize, it is based on Bitcoin, and until massive adoption happens, you're just throwing away a lot of your currency, or you might be able to pump it, but the point in case is it's just junk, really, until people really back it up and it's really used to help people on a massive scale. Bitcoin is it's clean, it's a whole new system. Let's just get rid of fiat and let's adopt this. Let's use this to this new practice. Let's start from the basis instead of having some control. Just keep controlling it and making it just a mess and no one has a chance to understand it. I don't think a lot of people in the space really understand how bonds, exchange, and different exchanges work with bank-to-bank practices. Excuse me, I'm watching like 6 huge jets go flying by. But I think that it's going to be the younger crowd is understanding what money and sound money and exchanges and peer-to-peer transactions, and those who are now in the space need to realize that this new stuff is what we should be getting into right now. Just the basics, whether it's programming, whether it's exchange, whether it's how to set up a wallet, whether it's the economics behind it. Austrian economics is amazing, and people should just read about it. It's really interesting and really easy to understand. Yeah.
And the way to add to that, how do you get people to understand about it? You are doing it right now. This is it. This is the way through YouTube, through reach out to people and read about it and tell about it. It's like the battle of intelligence, people, and you just try to convince other people that this is the right way, and the virus spreads, and that's it. And this is the best way, having these kind of topics and talking about it, and the podcast and YouTube. That's the new way, and that's working.
Well said. Go ahead.
I'm just now going to leave to grab some lunch. So it was nice talking to you, and see you some other time.
It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks so much, Max, and Julius, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I will be still here. I would like to have some lunch, but talking to you is just too much fun, so I just can't get away from you.
All right, well, I'm out of questions, so I was going to go ahead and open up the phone lines. So if you'd like to call us now on Skype at World Crypto Network.
Hey, Max, I was going to
chat. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I finally added that I was accepting Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in my website. So I'm going to be curious just to see when my clients are the first to present it. But something that I'm offering is bundle packages, so they can get certain amount of sessions with me and to see me as a massage therapist, personal trainer, and to see if they will use Bitcoin or the other 3 exchange currencies that I'm going to use to pay for their services, to pay me. So that's going to be something I just adopted into my own thing, because I think the more we get that thing out there, and people will pay more, well, not pay more, but they'll use it because it's cheaper, if they use the cryptocurrencies rather than just paying me in a bank transfer or fiat currency. So I'm going to be implementing that into it, and I just started that this last week.
Wow, that's amazing, Rico. That's really, really fucking good, because that's exactly what we need. We need entrepreneurs and we need the businesses to use Bitcoin. Don't just invest in it. Yes, it's speculative. Yes, you can make a bunch of money with it. We're all going to the moon. Hell yeah, it's super cool. But that's not what Bitcoin is all about. Bitcoin is a currency. It's a cash system, and you're supposed to use it as cash in everyday transactions. And that's amazing that you already got the normal Bitcoin transactions on your website, but you could also try getting the Lightning transactions. BTC Pay Server, I think, already supports Lightning Network with just a couple of clicks. There's a plugin for WordPress, super, super simple. And there are other ways that you can accept Lightning Network payments today in Bitcoin on your website with basically just a couple clicks. And that is exactly what we need. And so right here next to me, we're joined by another one of the great young scholars here at Mises University. It's so much fun. There's so many nice people here and so many really well-educated people. So guys, this is Zach.
Hey there, everyone. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome, Zach. What do you do at the Mises University? Are you writing a paper, and what are your thoughts on Bitcoin?
I'm not a summer fellow or anything like that. This is my second time here at Mises University, but I am starting my MA PhD at Catholic University this fall in political theory. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, I think, are awesome. I have a pretty good layman's understanding of them, but I am deficient in a lot of the more technical things. I do own some crypto. I don't own Bitcoin anymore, but I think that decentralized currency is imperative. Basically, that's what I'm very interested in. What I want my work to focus on is very, very broadly conceived about decentralization. As a lot of things about civil society, but the central government control of currency is an immense part, and the crypto movement is undermining that, and I think the genie's kind of out of the bottle, and the government can't really do much about it now or down the road. I mean, they can make it harder, but can't really be stopped, and I think that's great.
Absolutely, I agree. Denationalization and decentralization of currency is amazing. If you want to read a good book about that, read Friedrich Hayek's, who, by the way, is a Nobel Prize, what do you call it, lecturer? I don't know. He has a book, Denationalization of Currency. It's written in like the 1980s, basically explains Bitcoin. And this is the cool thing. Now we have competition, we have anarchy in money, which means, hell yeah, we can choose whatever currency we want. And this will ultimately lead to the best available currency. And it doesn't have to be Bitcoin. Maybe it is, maybe it doesn't. We do not know that. But that's not the cool thing. We can actually now, through decentralization, through denationalization, can choose which currency we want to use. And that's the cool thing. And you said that you don't know that much about Bitcoin, which is, of course, okay, because it's a niche subject, but you do know a lot about economics. And that is basically what money is, right? Money is economics. And if you already understand what money is, you pretty much understand Bitcoin. Yeah, the technical stuff is not there, but also you don't understand the technical stuff of how to send an email. You just do it.
And I definitely recommend that everyone should check out a great lecture by Guido Hulsmann called the Cultural, I believe it's called The Cultural Consequences of Fiat Currency. It's really mind-blowing when you think about it, because normally when a lot of libertarians focus on fiat currency, it's about the very obvious from an Austrian standpoint bad consequences of fiat currency, business cycles, all that kind of stuff. But he delves in into how it changes the way people live. He deals a lot. Basically, we have a debtor society just because if you were just to put away $1,000 in the bank to save up to buy a house or something, in 20 years you've lost 40%. It's lost 40% of its value. So saving it generally does not make much sense under the system we have now. And it also, I think this plays a very large role in some problems we have in terms of rent seeking and things like that. It creates a lot of jobs where people are just shuffling money around, and it's not exactly doing very much that's actually producing things of actual value to people. So I definitely recommend checking out that lecture and his book, The Ethics of Money Production.
Ethics of Money Production, amazing, amazing book. I cannot recommend it enough. And the good thing is Guido Hulsmann is here at Mises University. And 100% we're going to have at least one interview with him. I hope we're going to get some more, because he's a phenomenal economist and an incredibly smart man.
And an interesting point about that, the other day I said something offhand like printing money is a libertarian crime. and it is to me. But then the libertarians got mad at me and they said, no, forcing people to use printed money is the crime. It's the force that's the crime for them. I wanted to ask you, how is Austrian economics different? Would you just say outright printing money is bad, or is it more about the force aspect of it?
Really interesting. So Austrian economic teaches you that as long as it's peaceful, as long as it's voluntary, it's okay. It's your right to do that. There's a great book called Anything That's Peaceful. Read that. It basically goes through, as soon as it's voluntary, as soon as it's peaceful, nobody is getting hurt. And the problem is always with aggression, with introducing force into the ecosystem. Now, let's take, for example, Dash. Dash is a cryptocurrency, and it is highly inflated. And it will be inflated, I think, forever. I don't think that they have a cap, but they have really high inflation. So does Bitcoin. Bitcoin also has inflation. But we do not have to use Dash. We do not have to use Bitcoin. So if you choose to use Bitcoin or Dash, you voluntarily choose to use the monetary policy of that currency. And the thing with, then by definition, it is no longer theft. It is no longer violence. But what Austrian economic teaches you is that if you increase the money supply, aka inflation, you print new money, that means that you take away purchasing power from the savers, those people that have 5 Bitcoin and they put it in the vault. With inflation, the purchasing power of that 5 Bitcoin will theoretically decrease. But the thing is, and you give that purchasing power that you took away from the savers, and you give it to the people receiving the money first. So in Bitcoin, it would be only the miners. And in Dash, it would be the miners, the masternodes, and the treasury. And therefore, those people, miners, masternodes, treasury, will be getting the purchasing power of the savers. So theoretically, they take away the purchasing power from them. It would be theft only if they force people to use it, if they force the savers to use it. But because we now have anarchy and money and no legal tender laws, that means nobody is forcing you to use the currency. That basically means that all we do here is voluntary. And yes, you take away the purchasing power from the savers and give it to the other people, the miners. It is voluntary, therefore it is okay.
Basically, I'd agree with that. That it's the problem with the dollar, but printing dollars, is that is the money, basically. And aside, it would perhaps some listeners would beg to differ, but it would be a lot harder for everyone, the average person, to just start adopting crypto and start using it, like at the grocery store. I don't know where I shop would accept that. So yeah, basically I agreed with everything he said, that it's I would say it's the issue of fraud. If you have a cryptocurrency and the way it's structured and kind of advertised is that it won't be inflationary or something like that, then people will plan with how they use it based on that understanding. And if that changes, then I would say that's fraudulent and bad and wrong.
It sounds like to me what you guys are saying when it comes to being able to relate Bitcoin, in my sense, what I'm hearing, relatable to Bitcoin is the economics. Austrian economics is clean economics, and it's an idea of growing an equivalence level that the people and the users of the currencies, agree. And I think that Bitcoin solves a lot of the economic issues of living in a debt society. I think that right now, as a human culture, we have been practicing debt culture and debt fiat exchange for so long that that's how we see it. It's always about how many of your friends owe you money, or you owe this person money, or you owe the bank money, or somebody's always owing money. Why does it have to be like that? If we could just get rid of that and we're not into this debt culture, I think Bitcoin does that. It offers this clean, maybe not just Bitcoin, but cryptocurrency allows people to use the currency anywhere, anytime on an international basis. And I think that Bitcoin is the goal that people need to be investing into. You don't have to go and buy it and exchange it. I'm not preaching to anybody to go and buy it. What I'm saying is you should make evaluated decisions and then based off that, if we're in a digital gold rush right now, and no one wants you to know about that, meaning the big powers like BlackRock, if they don't want you to know that, they're not going to tell you. They're going to leak small things because they're mining it, they're investing into it, and that could mean it's because cryptocurrency is the future. You know, it's the means of exchange. Fiat currency, debt practices are over, and so we're at the dawn of a new age, and that's why we're seeing that. It's the water's overflowing of debt. You know, we're just drowning in debt right now. That's my opinion on Bitcoin and Austrian economics and the way that we should look at cryptocurrencies.
So I have to go, but thanks for having me on. It was great, and best of luck.
Well, you know, there's so much fun stuff to do here at the Mises University. It's tough. It's tough to get away from all the people. But Rico, great points that you brought up. And what I would like to add is that even in Bitcoin, the inflation does create wrong incentives. And in my opinion, the inflation in Bitcoin was, especially in the early years, really, really, really high. I mean, we were like at 50% inflations on the first block, or 100% inflation on the first block. And like in the first year, we had like 23% inflation. In the second year, 2010, then we had roughly, I think, 10% inflation, which is really, really high. And Austrian economics teaches you that if you have inflated money, this basically creates wrong incentives. And in the current market, basically, with inflation, the price of money decreases, which means you can purchase more money to eventually buy a house, for example. So the demand for houses increases artificially more than it usually would have, and that leads to a boom of the housing market. As soon as people realize that they spend too much, there's the crash. And that's what happened in 2007, and that is what will happen really, really soon. And now, how is this inflation a bad incentive in Bitcoin? Basically, the inflated money goes to the miners in order to pay for transaction fees, because someone has to secure the network, and we finance that with the inflation of the new coins being generated, the Coinbase output, and transaction fees. And so in the early days, the transactions were basically free for the user. He did not have to pay any transaction fees, because the miners got as a reward for securing the network the newly inflated Bitcoin, the Coinbase UTXOs. And that means that people thought that Bitcoin transactions are free, but they are not. They are actually really, really expensive. They just seem to be free because users didn't have to pay the money up front, but the savers had to pay for it with a loss in their purchasing power. And so basically now we see that transaction fees, Bitcoin on-chain, can be really, really high, but that's normal. And that's what will be the standard. Why? Because they have always been high. They just weren't paid by the user, they were paid by the savers. And this led to a bunch of investments into companies that thought that you could have forever and ever and ever basically zero fee transactions on the Bitcoin network. That's why, for example, Satoshi Dice, by the guy who invented Shapeshift, I forgot his name, is no longer feasible, because now we realize that on-chain transactions are not free. They can be really expensive. And using it for bad stuff that doesn't really do anything is not that useful.
So going back to the other question, you guys would be fine with Steam It because they're printing their own money, but they're not forcing you to use it. You're still muted. I could put words in your mouth, but things are going on.
You could.
But yeah, it's a lot happening in Mises University today. We're checking in with Max all the way from Alabama in the United States here. Talking about Austrian economics and Keynesianism and all that kind of good stuff. They say the price is moving now. Where's it moving? Go ahead, Max.
How volatility?
Okay, so right here we have another one of the great young students and great young minds here at Mises University. It's James Bryan. So James, say hello.
Hello,
Hi, James.
Welcome to the show. We got about 153 people watching us live. Mainly we're talking about Bitcoin, but just what's your background? What are you working on?
I actually work at a cryptocurrency hedge fund. I'm an operations intern, and I got back into Bitcoin back in 2017, about like exactly a year ago. I read Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper. Highly recommend it. If your audience, I'm assuming your audience is like well versed. But anyway, great book to start out, get you passionate about Bitcoin. The firm I'm working for is a quantitative hedge fund, so they're bearish and they try to take advantage of the inefficiencies of a new market. So I kind of like I'm kind of a maximalist, a Bitcoin maximalist. So I kind of have to go in there and like try to build up the other side of the argument, take their bearish input, realize that it's not perfect, the whole thing, and kind of work around that. So that's kind of my background.
Excellent. Yeah, it's certainly been bearish for the last year or so, but we're hoping we can turn that around and get out of that. Some people are already really excited today. They say it shifted to a buy signal on TradingView. So at least in the short term, we might be out of this bearish market.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing with Bitcoin. It is really, really, really volatile. I mean, just think about that. We started 2017 at under $1,000 for one Bitcoin. We reached in December $20,000, in some countries $28,000, and now we dropped back to like 5,500, I think was the low. This is really, really, really volatile, and Bitcoin is a really, really speculative investment. And I mean, what Thomas and I usually say is do dollar cost average. Buy a little bit every week, every month, and therefore you can average out your cost. So it's not like this; it's more like this. But on the other hand, what you could do is you could take advantage of this really volatile market. Because with stuff like options and swaps and futures, you can actually make money when the price decreases. And let's be honest, most of us who were in Bitcoin for the long run knew that when we hit 20,000, or even when we hit 15, 17, 20,000, we knew that this is too much. You cannot go up exponentially forever. So a smart person, now in hindsight, it's easy to say that he should have shorted the market, but this would have been possible. And if the person would have done that, he would not have lost any purchasing power, but probably even gained some.
My kind of question right now is, I was reading in Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith was talking about a good currency. Well, when you start using a currency, the volatility naturally decreases because throughout its use, you get closer to equilibrium. But it's kind of like a paradox because it's Bitcoin and cryptos are volatile, therefore they're not a good currency. But in order to make them a good currency, you have to use them. So it's kind of like a paradox. And my question is, what's going to really be like the cataclysmic shift to Bitcoin? What's going to put the actual pressure on people to use it for transactions? And kind of like,
Max.
Like Max was saying, how much of it is speculation? And how much of it is actually utilitarian, where it has use in transactions. And I feel like the more people that use it for transactions, the less volatile it's going to become. People are going to approach the equilibrium, like the actual, price of kind of stabilization of it. And my question is, what's going to trigger that sort of shift into using Bitcoin as a transactionary currency rather than just a store of value?
Well, I definitely agree with you that it is a paradox. It's a bit like the chicken and the egg. We have things on both sides, and people have tried both sides. They've tried merchant adoption, having a bunch of merchants that take Bitcoin, but then the problem is no one shops there. People have tried to get a bunch of shoppers together to get normal people together to try to use Bitcoin and to use it at a place or ask the place if they take it. But neither of those are really doing it. I think it's going to be difficult for people, but it's going to take patience. What Bitcoin's going to do to win is not die. For the last 8 years, all the articles say that Bitcoin's dead. They say it's dead all the time. Bitcoin keeps not dying. I think the more that people see it not dying, they'll see it as an alternative, and they'll think of it. Like when the Cyprus event happened in 2013, the people they couldn't withdraw their money from the banks. They started buying Bitcoin. Venezuela wasn't really technologically set up for this, but they are slowly but surely starting to buy Bitcoin to get out of their hyperinflation problems. I think when we hit one of those in a country, for example, like Japan, that has great technology, a very highly technical class of people, when they have an economic crisis, they'll all think in the back of their heads, oh yeah, we have that Bitcoin thing. We have a way out of this now. And if they already have the ATMs and they already have the wallets and the ability to learn technology, I think that will happen. So I think staying around and then having some kind of a crisis, and then just the fact that Bitcoin doesn't go away, the more that it doesn't go away, the more likely it is to have that event. What do you think, Ricardo?
I think you're right on the point. I think Bitcoin is resilient, and I think here's my thing as you're talking about this. It just keeps popping in my head, and I hate to be that person that is becoming a globalist, but gold kind of is the global metal that everybody can hold on to and is tangible in its sense of exchange. But I believe that digital gold, Bitcoin, is going to be once the first country adopts it, whether it's Russia, whether it's Canada, whether it's Austria, this seems to be happening, is as soon as one of these leading countries who is economically structured, like Switzerland, and they have got their own banks that they can confide in, once these countries start using it, it's only a matter of time before everybody wants to be in that race. They all want to be in that race, and it just takes one country. And I think with ETFs and ETPs coming in, the Bitcoin exchange, is going to be, it needs, what I think we're waiting for is mass adoption on a national scale. Once one country does it, it's going to go FUBAR, and it's going to kick the dollar, the petrol, the gold, all that currency to the side. I'm waiting for this. I'm abroad in a country that knows a little bit about it, but those who do, we all combine, we're this network together. So one country, I believe, is going to take the lead, and then that's going to be the domino that really makes it public. Personally, think that.
I want to
exactly, absolutely.
Sorry, Max. I want to agree with what Ricardo says before I throw it back to you guys. But the countries can't trust each other, and the banks can't trust each other. Right now, we're looking for one country or one bank to betray all the other banks. And when that happens, the other countries, the other banks will all jump right in. And it's only a matter if your country was first, second, or third to see where you're going to place in this Bitcoin revolution. So, yeah, I think we're waiting for them to turn on each other. But what do you guys think?
Absolutely. And we already saw that the banks are going to turn on each other in 2007, 2008. Because when they realized that the entire system is messed up and they had not even a clue who owns what, with all those credit default swaps and mortgage-backed securities and all that stuff, all the derivatives, the market is so complex, the banks don't even know what they own. And then they realized, oh, well, shit, we could actually go bankrupt. And as soon as they realized that, they stopped lending each other money. And that led to a huge liquidity crisis. Why? Well, because banks are by definition illiquid. They are all fractional reserve. They lend out more money than they own by a factor of over 100. That's crazy. So banks are pretty much always illiquid. They're always bankrupt. And it only works because they can inflate the money supply even further to sustain themselves. And further, I would also like to quote Andreas Antonopoulos here, because he says, you cannot get Bitcoin out of your country, but you can get your country out of Bitcoin. Basically, because Bitcoin is censorship-resistant, digital and decentralized money that is owned by the consumer, by the user. I run a Bitcoin full node. Nobody is telling me what to believe or not. I don't trust, I verify. And this means that my country has no chance of ever getting me out of Bitcoin. This means if my country will have draconian laws, I'll just move. And all the smart people, all the smart money are going to exit those countries that have the harshest regulations with Bitcoin. Because basically they can't do anything about it. And so the incentives for the countries is pretty much what Switzerland is doing, what Hong Kong is doing, what Malta is doing, what Gibraltar is doing, to be as open and as friendly to new peaceful technologies such as Bitcoin as they can. Because if they do, those people or those countries, the citizens will not leave the country, the smart citizens. On the contrary, the smart citizens in the oppressed countries.
Oh, he was rolling and he froze. We're doing so well.
I think what he was talking about, because I've talked with him on the side about this, is that this is rolling. This ball is starting to roll. And the more markets that open up to these exchanges that aren't necessarily public yet, I think there's a reason not going public yet is because they have to test them to see if they work. And if you have just one exchange, in Europe, that's a very small exchange that you have to be part of this special banking chain to be a part of it, which I've looked into. If they're the only ones using it and it hasn't gone public, then they can practice it. They can see who loses money, who makes money. When Bitcoin was public, it wasn't actually public. No one exchanged it. You know, you bought a pizza and that wasn't really anything. But if Russia takes it and makes a ruble, a crypto ruble, and they exchange it on the cryptocurrency, just you can use that in public, then boom, that's going to be it. If France does it, if the US does the USDT, and they're like, okay, now you can pay your taxes in USDT, you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin, and you know, that's when people are like, oh, they're letting their citizens pay in Bitcoin. They're letting the citizens pay debt or their taxes in Bitcoin. Okay, now we need to start looking over our shoulder, because no one wants to be the first to do it. I know America doesn't want to do it, because as liberal as you guys are, it's also a controlled liberal state. So a conservative mindset is Bitcoin, because once that kicks in, the government is going to have to watch what they're spending on, because people can check that on the blockchain. People can say, you know, we're not going to support your new cryptocurrency because we would just keep using Bitcoin rather than your USDT. We're going to make the citizens coin or something like that, you know. So.
Oh yeah, this radically changes government spending. If governments start falling to Bitcoin, if banks start falling to Bitcoin, you simply can't print money anymore. And although we've lost the two guys, I was going to ask them about hyperinflation. I know we're all against hyperinflation, the massive money printing, the desperate money printing, things that are happening in Venezuela or Germany after World War One, with the endless printing of the Deutschmarks. You had to get a wheelbarrow full of it to buy a loaf of bread. But there's another side to this hyperinflation when you put Bitcoin in the game. And if the guys come back, I'll ask them again. But what I was going to ask is hyperinflation good for Bitcoin? And you have to imagine a scenario where a government's cranking away, working on their money machine, and they decide that they're going to buy Bitcoin with their newly printed money. So they print $1 million and they buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin. Next week, they're like, hey, that worked good. Let's try it again. They print another $1 million. But now, instead of getting like a whole Bitcoin or a whole million Bitcoin or whatever, they're going to get a 0.9 or a 0.8. Bitcoin's worth more. And then the next time they print another $1 million, they get a 0.7 or a 0.6. And they keep cranking their machine and they keep getting less. And this is just inflating the value of Bitcoin. But there's no way for them to get their money back out, because Bitcoin's never going to give up and buy their inflationary currency. And when people start seeing this really on a large scale, the massive Bitcoin adoption is going to happen, and it's going to be like nothing you've ever seen. So many people waking up to this idea that on one side you have this worthless, endlessly printed money that even they are using to buy Bitcoin now, and on the other side you have this Bitcoin almost impossible to print. 50% reductions every year in the mining, or every 4 years in the mining with the halvings. There could be a real train wreck. And yeah, it's going to get violent. I don't know. Things are going to happen. But Bitcoin, with its rules and its standards, it's just going to survive it all. It's not going to care. So it's going to be exciting to see.
What you're sounding, what you're talking about, what I keep thinking is as Ripple, the cryptocurrency, you know, that was created to make an exchange. I think what you could kind of compare that to is a cryptocurrency that has been adopted by the bureaucracies and the banks to try to buy as much and inflate it with as much. And in the end, what happens? It just brings up Bitcoin. Somebody said this in a past show I just watched. In the end, you're going to take your altcoin and you're going to exchange it back for Bitcoin. And I keep saying that to myself and out loud, because that's what I did. I took a lot of my money that I bought all crypto altcoins. And when I started to saw Bitcoin going down, as scared as I was owning Bitcoin, I didn't think about getting out of the space, but I thought about, I got to exchange this for Bitcoin. I don't want to be in these coins that can go down to, you know, who knows what they're worth after, like, they go through the bull market, or the bear market. I can't think right now. But yeah, when the consolidation happens, which altcoin is going to survive, you know? And when the consolidation of peace and new practices, which fiat currency is going to survive, if any, you know? Paradigm shift is happening. It's not going to happen overnight. We need countries to adopt this. We need people to adopt this. And the more that you adopt this early on, before it becomes massive adoption, the less FOMO you're going to have to deal with about wallets and getting some of this, getting some in your portfolio when it doubles. You know, if it goes up to 12 in a month, if it goes up, you know, and it is going to get inflated. That's kind of what makes the demand high, is people want it. It's going to inflate, you know. So don't go spend your entire paycheck, but, you know, maybe get your family together and have like your own family Bitcoin account that, you know, you can just watch it go up or down. And it's a chance for you to not FOMO, you know?
And you reminded me of a title of a book there when you said, in the end, you just end up becoming yourself. Is this great book about David Foster Wallace, and he went on the road with this reporter, and they talked about themselves. And it reminds me, I watched this 4-hour Gary Shandling documentary on HBO. You guys should check it out. He was an incredible comedian and writer. And in part of it, he was talking to Jerry Seinfeld in the Comedians and Coffee Car episode show. And he said that when Seinfeld does his act, he's just expressing himself, and that's all it is. At the very core, his act, his humor is him expressing the truth of himself. And I thought that was really interesting and kind of tied in with the David Foster Wallace. But it looks like Max is back. Do you guys want a question? I had a hard question for you. The audience liked it. I can give it to you.
Let's do one more question, but actually we are already running late to the next lecture, which is going to be on the division of labor and social order by Dorgo Bat. I do not know how to pronounce the name, but please shoot the last question and we're going to do a quick fire answer.
All right, one more question. I know that you guys don't like hyperinflation. I don't like hyperinflation, but let's imagine that hyperinflation might be good for Bitcoin. If a government is printing out money and they print out $1 million one year and they buy some Bitcoin, and they print out $1 million the next week and they buy less Bitcoin, and they print out another $1 million and they buy less Bitcoin, could the hyperinflation model end up pumping up the Bitcoin? Would this be good or bad Bitcoin for Bitcoin? Could it go bad in the end? What do you guys think?
Really interesting question, and I think that's a big attack vector against Bitcoin, because what you're basically doing there is you're stealing money from these savers in the fiat currency, and you use that stolen money to buy Bitcoin, which is sound money. So you are exchanging fraudulently acquired money and are buying Bitcoin with it, which is a free currency. So I would argue that because you have inflated money in that transaction, it is theft, not just by the original owner, not just by the savers in the fiat money, but also by the person who is exchanging his valuable Bitcoin with the newly created, fraudulently created fiat money. So I think it's fraud on a big level, and I think it should be prosecuted, but the government is not going to prosecute itself.
I agree with Max. Will it be good or bad for Bitcoin? It depends on whether you're treating Bitcoin as a store of value or whether you're treating it as a currency that will transact and acquire goods instead of just trading it for money, which is just money. At the end of the day, money is a vehicle to acquire more goods, more wealth. So it depends on which angle you look at it from.
Okay, so that's basically it. Unfortunately, we have to get going. I want to finish this little thing with this fantastic book called The Theory of Money and Credit by the amazing economist Ludwig von Mises. And the cool thing is that this copy I'm holding right now was actually owned by the great Murray Rothbard. And for example, you see right here that he has put some notes, some handwritten notes on that in this book. This is not just the only book that the Mises Institute has by Murray Rothbard. They have his entire library in there. So if you're ever in Auburn, Alabama, come to the Mises Institute and read the books that Rothbard has written. It's amazing what he marked on the edges. So I'm going to read from chapter 2, the first paragraph. It's called On the Measurement of Value, the immeasurability of subjective use value. Although it is usual to speak of money as a measurement of value and as prices, the notion is entirely fallacious. So long as the subjective theory of value is accepted, this question of measurement cannot arise. In the older political economy, the search for a principle governing the measurement of value was to a certain extent justifiable.
Oh, it was working so well, and then it stopped. That's all
right. That was a good pause. It was a good reading. I was really getting into that. Man, being in economics must be the most frustrating thing, being in a debt society, you know. And Bitcoin is beautiful because it kind of solves that problem. It regulates itself without being, there's no owner, you know. And Satoshi needs to stay out of the picture in order for this to keep going, I personally think.
I was just excited Mises got somebody to hold on to his library. That sounded pretty cool. Max was all excited because he wrote in the book I've been highlighting my Kindle books, but I guess I need to write in them more, add more value to them. I have some marks on some of the pages. Maybe that helps, but yeah, it's pretty cool to get somebody to host your whole library.
Great. Yeah, they're doing a good job down there. Economics will probably be the future language of exchange for everybody. If everybody in classes and schools were taught about money and economics and savings and the value of your money and time, I think we'd all be looking at the world in a different perspective other than the world we live in, you know. And it's kept a secret. Everything is kept super hard and like a maze to figure out the truth. We've got these people, we pay lots of money to tell us how the laws work. And even if they don't work in your favor, they're going to be the ones that represent you. We have these people who are regulating all these things, but we're paying them. And they're created by the government, so the government can blame them for if something goes wrong. It's just a blame game, and it's because no one understands anything, and I kept it that way. And I like Bitcoin because it clarifies, you have this money, you want that, you exchange it for that, and then there's nothing in the middle, you know?
Absolutely. And I think we're heading towards the end of this show. I know, Ricardo, you said you had to take off.
Yeah, so good.
Max was going to do a reading. So people said they like my old wall of books. I'm working to rebuild it here in Las Vegas. I got this one yesterday called The Face of Battle by John Keegan. He's a historian. I read his other books about the First World War and the Second World War, very big topics. He's a good writer, and I've seen this one kicking around for a while. Obviously, the copyright says it's from 1976, so not exactly new, older than me, this book. But what I found so interesting when I read the table of contents is it wasn't just about battles, and I'm interested. He talks about Agincourt, Waterloo, the Somme, but it's also about military history. So there's a chapter here, the usefulness of military history and the deficiencies of military history. Both of those sounded good. The history of military history, that sounds really good. And then at the end, he's got a whole section on the future of battle and the moving battlefield, the nature of battle. So I'm totally into that. I want to check out this book by John Keegan when I get time. And I got this other book called Live from New York. It's the oral history of Saturday Night Live. And I'm big into Saturday Night Live. I can't read enough about it. I've watched all the shows where the guys tell their story about their audition and all that kind of thing. And, you know, I read Jay Moore's book about behind the scenes there, and big into Chris Farley and all that kind of stuff. So excited to check it out. And I love these new oral histories they're doing about everybody now. It's super sad because it means everybody who did the oral history is going to die. But at least we got it down on paper first. And we're going to be able to go back to these oral histories, and these primary source materials where you actually interview the person directly is the foundation of all history. And that's kind of what these shows all are. They're all primary source in the time period histories of what's going on. And if we're wrong or whatever, they'll easily go back to this and show us where we're wrong. But if we're right, this could be an incredible collection of people knowing what was going to happen before it happened. So I'm fine to take it either way on that. I can only tell my truth here and try to be honest and that kind of thing. And people are all mad on Twitter or whatever, but watch my shows, judge me by what I do. Don't judge me by what other people do. That's nonsense.
Well said. Well said. I don't know if you check out the Patreon, but I put on a little, I put in the community section something, and it talks about that. And I think one thing we can look at, that I like to tell people, is that the best offense is a defense. And if the things change and you've got a chance to make an offensive position by investing in Bitcoin, I think that is going to be a great defense. If the banks and everything plummet, that's a small defense that I'm making for my family, investing some of our savings and my income, and having people pay for my services in Bitcoin, because if it becomes a change of paradigm and you have a lot of that, that's going to be a great offense. You can move upgrade to your house. You can, if it becomes a way to pay taxes, you know, it reminds me back when you could pay in hemp, you know, and you could, so we'll see what happens. But the shift could be right here. You were saying something about the book you were just talking about, by John Keegan, The Face of Battle. I'm looking at it right here. And the next that you said, the very end, yes, that's it. The future offense or something like that. It's going to be interesting. What's going to be the next thing?
Oh yeah, and I'm sure he's talking about technology and mobile battlefields and a lot of the stuff that we've already seen. I'll bet, and this is from the 70s right here, but I'll bet that Mr. Keegan essentially predicts the Iraq War. The first Iraq War, the Desert Storm, whatever you want to call it, the first Iraq War, the United States machines were so much better than the Iraqi or the old Soviet machines that we could hit their tanks before they could see our tanks. It was that bad, the technological differences. And if you ever look at the battle plans of what happened there, it's textbook because nothing went wrong. The Americans do a perfect pincher operation. They have no resistance. They circle around. They get more prisoners than they have facilities to deal with. They have a problem of having too many prisoners. Too many people are surrendering to them. Again, and the ones that did fight and they tried to protect their country or be noble or whatever you want to say, they got wrecked because they couldn't even see our tanks and we were already hitting them. So, and that's to say nothing about air power and the rest of the superiority. It was a disastrous conflict for the Iraqi side. The vaunted Republican Guard totally wrecked.
The America came in there, they destroyed, and I think we are in a technological world where that's the new battle is the information, disinformation, misinformation, the truth, the lies. They're directing their narratives. If anybody wants to go to my channel, feel free to go to Rico Coin Report. I talk a little bit about this. There's a lot of intelligence coming out of Israel. That's my personal thing. It has nothing to do with Crypto Network. But the reason I'm investing my money into, not from fiat, but into cryptocurrency is because I feel like I can hold the keys, where the technical world is looking over your shoulder. Every keystroke you make, every like, thumbs up, thumbs down, it doesn't make a difference. It's just being all input into massive databases. So I think Bitcoin could be the future for a defense for people's money. And there's a lot of technical things happening that no one wants to talk about or no one's allowed to know about. So that book was written in 1970. That blows my mind.
Yep, it's a classic. And we're going to head towards the end of the show here. Just some show updates. I do have a cotton ball on my arm. I got a blood test today. So hopefully that's going to be good. And they'll find out what's wrong with me and I'm getting better. I have a root canal scheduled for tomorrow morning. So no show tomorrow. I'll likely be recovering the rest of the day. So thanks so much for the positive wishes. It's my first one. I'm really excited. I'm not excited at all. I don't know. I have a follow-up appointment on Thursday, so I might not be here. Then Wednesday, I'm going to do an interview with Andy Hoffman. I'm going to ask him all the questions you've always wanted to know about B-Rhodium, whatever that is. Right? I don't care. But everyone's hassling me on Twitter, so now I have to talk about it. Now I have to go read about what it is, and I have to think of some interesting questions to ask Andy. And if you guys have some questions in the chat, be sure to be there Wednesday around this same time, around 9 a.m. Hopefully I'll be fully recovered and able to talk and everything again. If that doesn't happen, I don't know. But yeah, they're mad. Yeah, I have some like digestive issues. The doctors are going to work on it. I'm getting older. This kind of thing happens. Everyone needs to eat well, eat more fiber, get exercise, and see the doctor and the dentist every year or so. Good advice for everybody. Even if you're a young guy, you think you're never going to get sick, something will happen. So that's about it. Ricardo, anything in closing?
You guys, thank you so much for checking in with us. It's getting more rolling. The crowd is changing and growing because of you guys. Be sure to check in at World Crypto Network. If you haven't become a Patreon, you can become a Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can give us a one-time some Satoshis. We just want to get you guys information out. So this, like Thomas said, this is all going to be in history of time of this new space. Checking in from France, checking out from France. Merci beaucoup. Bonne soirée.
All right. We just want to thank all of our Patreons on the World Crypto Network Patreon and the Mad Bitcoins Patreon account, where you can subscribe for as little as like $2 a month or whatever you want with your credit card. Or if you'd like to donate Bitcoin directly, you can always donate Bitcoin and several other altcoins with this graphic here on the screen. Maybe it's not visible. There it is. Now it's smaller. Now it's bigger. I don't know. Figure it out. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time. Bye-bye.